Now, both Tony Abbott and John Howard have also spoken to Paul Murray about the Indigenous Voice. And given this constitutional change, this referendum will only succeed with bipartisan support. Their views are pretty important. Opposition Leader Peter Dutton is keeping an open mind. In my view, he needs to be very careful. He should avoid being a roadblock on the path to reconciliation. He needs to be constructive. There are legitimate considerations here and perhaps some compromises to be had. Abbott remains a strong opponent.
I think this is something that we need to have a very serious second thoughts about, because the more it's considered, the more it's examined, the less like a good idea it will seem. I would be very much in favour of recognising Indigenous people in the Constitution. We have an otherwise admirable Constitution, but there was a deeply regrettable omission, which I suppose was a product of the prejudices of the 1890s, and that is no generous acknowledgement of Indigenous people in the Constitution.
Yeah, fair enough. But the thing is, that's the debate from a decade and a half ago. Indigenous Australians, in a broad consensus across this country, have understandably decided that such a mention in the preamble would be merely symbolic, tokenistic even. If they're to be mentioned in the Constitution that at times has been used against them, they want something practical, hence the voice. And just as importantly, constitutional conservatives believe it is safer constitutionally to enshrine a voice which will be shaped by and subservient to Parliament, rather than put general sentiments of goodwill into the preamble or elsewhere in the Constitution. As it stands now, there will be no constitutional recognition without a voice to Parliament. And unless critics like Tony Abbott can demonstrate serious unintended consequences, then their campaign is more about fear-mongering than protecting the Constitution. If the proposed wording is dangerous, suggest a safer option. If that can't be done, tell us why. We have changed the Constitution before. We can't pretend that it's beyond our capabilities to get this right. 2 former Chief Justices of the High Court, no less, have endorsed this approach. My view, as you know, is that Conservatives should help to make this change more meaningful. They should actually make sure it's constitutionally safe and make sure it delivers practical benefits. I don't think outright opposition is going to cut it. John Howard has had something to say on this too.
This debate about the voice, let's have the debate, but whether you oppose it or you support it ought not to be a test of whether you care for the Indigenous people of this country. We all do.
Well, spot on. Everyone is in this for the right outcome, I would think. Indigenous academic Anthony Dillon has spoken out on this too. Writing in the Epoch Times, he said this debate should not be about racism. There appear to be 2 extreme arguments where the Indigenous voice to Parliament is concerned. However, both are lazy and facile at best, writes Dillon. The first is from the pro-voice group, who suggest that opposing it is racist. The second is from the anti-voice group, who suggest that supporting it is racist. I support neither of these arguments. Well said, Anthony Dillon. Look, I don't criticise anyone for raising legitimate concerns. They should do that. The jingoism of the left, who just say it feels good, let's do it, is actually quite dangerous. We shouldn't be flippant about a significant change. But the thing is, constitutional conservatives have been looking at all these issues, grappling with all these challenges since the idea was first properly mapped out by Noel Pearson back in 2014. Yes, the constitutional framing has to be precise. Yes, we have to stress test it. And yes, Labor should release more detail into the public debate. But this can be done if we believe it's worthwhile. As a nation, do we want to say that if a Parliament has the power to make special laws about one group of Australians, Indigenous Australians, then it should also get some non-binding advice from those people on their issues? This would not only help government make the best decisions, presumably, but also increase Indigenous responsibility and accountability for their own progress, for closing the gap. It could lead to beneficial, practical outcomes. In essence, it would offer a fair go. If we want to do that, we can. But don't pretend it's beyond us.